Maria Cruz had spent years building a solid career. As a financial analyst in New York City, she was known for her intelligence, dedication, and strong work ethic. She was the type of person who never missed an appointment, never ignored calls, and always kept in touch with her loved ones. But on a seemingly ordinary day in November 2003, Maria vanished. Her colleagues noticed first she didn't show up for work. At first, they assumed she was running late, but as the hours passed, concern turned to alarm. Maria wasn't someone who would simply disappear without notice. Her phone calls went unanswered. Messages were left unread. Her family, her friends, no one had seen or heard from her. It didn't take long before police got involved. They started retracing her last known movements, asking the most critical question: where was Maria Cruz? And more importantly, what happened to her? As investigators pieced together Maria's final hours, they made a key discovery. The last person to see her alive was Dr. Gilberto Nunez. Dr. Nunez was a well-known chiropractor in the area, respected, professional, a man who had spent years building trust with his patients. He told police that Maria had visited his office for a routine appointment. They talked. Nothing unusual, and then, according to him, she left. But something about his demeanor raised suspicion. For a man who had just seen a woman alive hours before she vanished, he was too calm, too certain, too rehearsed. Investigators had to ask, was he hiding something? And then they found something that shifted the entire case. Maria hadn't just been his patient, she had been so much more. Maria Cruz and Dr. Gilberto Nunez were lovers. It wasn't a rumor, it wasn't speculation. It was fact. They had been involved in a secret relationship, one that Maria had kept hidden from almost everyone in her life. But why? Because Maria had been trying to end it. Friends later told investigators that Maria wasn't happy anymore. She wanted to move on. But had Dr. Nunez accepted that? Police needed to know more. They searched his home, his office, and what they found chilled them to the bone. Handwritten love letters. At first, they seemed like desperate pleas from a man who couldn't let go. But then, detectives noticed something bizarre. Some of the letters weren't signed by Nunez. They weren't even signed by Maria. They were written as if they were from Maria's deceased mother. Think about that for a second. This man had forged letters pretending to be Maria's dead mother, begging her to stay with him. What kind of person does that? And if he was willing to go to those lengths to keep Maria close, what else was he capable of? When police brought Dr. Gilberto Nunez in for questioning, they expected him to be nervous. They expected denial, maybe even an emotional breakdown. But instead, he was calm. Too calm. His demeanor was eerily composed, as if he had rehearsed every possible scenario in his mind. When asked about the sedative found in Maria's system, he barely flinched. His explanation: he shrugged and said, maybe she took it herself. But why would she? Maria was not suicidal. She had no history of drug abuse, no reason to self-medicate with a powerful sedative. And even if she had taken it willingly, how did she end up dead inside her own car? The detectives pushed harder, demanding to know how the drug got into her system. And that's when Nunez slipped. For the first time, his polished, confident demeanor cracked. He stammered. His story started shifting. He couldn't give a straight answer because he had no answer. The noose was tightening, but Nunez still had one last trick up his sleeve. Just when investigators thought they had a solid case, another bizarre twist surfaced. Maria's boyfriend came forward with something unsettling. After Maria had disappeared, he had received text messages from her phone, but something was off. The messages didn't sound like Maria. The way they were written, the phrasing, it was all wrong. Her boyfriend had known her for years. He knew the way she texted, the words she used. And these messages, they felt forced, fake. Had Maria really sent them? Or was someone pretending to be her to make it seem like she was still alive? Police traced the messages, hoping for answers. And when they found out where they had come from, it changed everything. The messages weren't sent by Maria. They had come from Dr. Gilberto Nunez's phone, the very same man who claimed to have no idea what had happened to her. The very same man who said Maria must have taken the drug on her own. It was all a lie. And worse, this wasn't just a cover-up. It was a setup. It wasn't enough for Nunez to cover his tracks. He wanted to shift the blame onto someone else. So he faked text messages pretending Maria was still alive. And then he tried to frame her boyfriend. Imagine that for a second. Maria is already dead. But instead of confessing, instead of showing remorse, Nunez goes one step further, fabricating messages to throw off the investigation. What kind of person does that? Who pretends to be a dead woman just to mislead the police? Who tries to make an innocent man take the fall for a crime they committed? But Nunez wasn't as smart as he thought he was. The evidence was piling up. The lies were unraveling. And soon, there would be nowhere left to hide. The forensic team worked quickly to analyze Maria Cruz's toxicology report. The results, undeniable proof of foul play. The sedative found in her system wasn't an everyday drug. It wasn't something she could have accidentally ingested, nor was it something she could have easily purchased at a pharmacy. It was a rare, controlled substance, a drug primarily used in medical settings to induce deep relaxation or unconsciousness. A drug that could be fatal in the wrong dosage. And who had access to such a substance? A doctor. Someone like Dr. Gilberto Nunez. There was no logical reason for Maria to have this drug in her system. No prescription, no medical need. So how did it get there? The answer was becoming clearer. Someone had given it to her. Someone who knew exactly how much to administer. Someone who thought they were smart enough to get away with it. But as investigators closed in, Nunez's carefully crafted lies were starting to fall apart. At first, Dr. Nunez denied everything. He told police he had nothing to do with Maria's death. He claimed he was devastated by her passing, that he loved her, that he would never hurt her. But the more detectives pushed, the more his story started to shift. First, he admitted to the affair. Then he admitted that Maria had been at his office the day she died. But when asked how she ended up dead inside her car, he suddenly had no answers. He had explanations for everything except the most important question. How did Maria die? Detectives knew they had him cornered. They had the toxicology report. They had the fake text messages. They had proof that he had been manipulating Maria even before she died. Now, they just needed one final move to bring him down. With the overwhelming evidence against him, police finally made their move. Dr. Gilberto Nunez was arrested. The charge? Murder. But even as he was being led away in handcuffs, Nunez had one last trick up his sleeve. He looked at detectives and said it was all a misunderstanding, that Maria's death was an accident, that he was innocent. But was he? Or was this just another lie in his web of deception? One thing was certain: the trial was about to reveal everything. When the trial began, everyone expected Dr. Gilberto Nunez to deny everything. But his defense was more shocking than anyone could have imagined. He didn't claim that someone else had killed Maria. He didn't even try to argue that he had nothing to do with it. Instead, he told the court that Maria had taken the drug willingly. According to Nunez, this wasn't murder, it was a tragic accident. He claimed that Maria had voluntarily ingested the powerful sedative and that he had no idea she would react so badly to it. But here's the problem: why would Maria do that? She wasn't someone who used drugs recreationally. She had no history of substance abuse. She had no medical condition that required sedation. And most importantly, if she had willingly taken the drug, why was it in a fatal dose? It didn't make sense. Was Nunez trying to rewrite history, making it look like Maria had done this to herself? Or was this just another attempt to cover up his crime? The jury had to decide. The prosecution laid out their case with damning evidence. The toxicology report confirmed that the sedative was not something Maria could have easily accessed on her own. The forged letters from Maria's deceased mother exposed Nunez's manipulative nature. The fake text messages proved he had gone to extreme lengths to cover his tracks. And finally, there was no logical reason why Maria would have taken that drug willingly. But there was a problem. There were no eyewitnesses. There was no security footage. And most importantly, there was no proof of how the drug was administered. Without a clear-cut way to prove that Nunez had personally drugged Maria, the jury was left with one big question. Was this a tragic accident or a cold-blooded murder? What do you think? Was Maria's death just an unfortunate mistake? Or had a man who was supposed to care for her turned into her killer? After days of deliberation, the jury finally reached a decision. Gilberto Nunez was guilty. But here's where things took an unexpected turn. He wasn't convicted of murder. Instead, he was found guilty of manslaughter and forgery. The jury believed that Maria had died as a result of Nunez's actions, but there wasn't enough hard evidence to convict him of premeditated murder. The sentence was lighter than expected, and this raised another question. Did he really get what he deserved? Maria Cruz was dead. Her family was left with heartbreak, loss, and unanswered questions. And Nunez, he would serve far less time than many believed he should. So, was justice truly served? Or did a cold, calculating manipulator get away with something far worse? When the verdict was read, there was a mix of relief and frustration in the courtroom. Dr. Gilberto Nunez was sentenced to prison, but not for murder. He was convicted of manslaughter and forgery. Manslaughter, not first-degree murder. Despite the overwhelming evidence, the forged letters, the fake text messages, the rare sedative that only he had access to, the jury had stopped short of labeling him a murderer. His sentence was far lighter than what Maria's family had hoped for. Because in their eyes, and in the eyes of many following the case, this was murder. Nunez had planned, manipulated, and deceived at every step. And yet, he was getting away with a lesser charge. What do you think? Was this a fair sentence? Or did a calculated killer manage to escape true justice? For Maria's family, the trial was over, but the pain was far from gone. They had lost a daughter, a sister, a friend. And for what? Because one man couldn't handle rejection. Because someone who had once professed to love Maria had instead poisoned her and staged an elaborate cover-up. And the worst part, Nunez still insists he's innocent. Even in prison, he never admitted guilt. He claims Maria's death was a tragic accident, that he had nothing to do with it. But can anyone believe a man who forged letters from a dead woman's mother? Who tried to frame an innocent boyfriend? Who sent fake text messages from a corpse? It all led to one haunting question. Had Maria's killer gotten away with it? Let's break it down. Nunez had access to the rare sedative, a drug not easily obtained, one that only a medical professional could administer properly. He was the last person to see Maria alive. He sent fake texts from Maria's phone after she was already dead. He tried to frame her boyfriend. Everything pointed to a planned, deliberate crime. So why was this not considered first-degree murder? Did the jury believe there was still reasonable doubt? Or did Nunez manage to manipulate the system just like he manipulated Maria? One thing is certain: Maria Cruz never got the justice she deserved. And Nunez, he may have been convicted, but did he truly pay for what he did? Some cases leave you wondering what might have been. If Maria Cruz had never met Dr. Gilberto Nunez, would she still be alive today? Would she still be working in the financial sector, thriving in her career, building a future? Would she have eventually settled down, started a family, lived the life she had worked so hard for? The reality is, we will never know, because one man, one person who claimed to love her decided that if he couldn't have her, no one could. But what if things had played out differently? If Maria had recognized the warning signs earlier, the manipulation, the control, the desperate obsession, could she have escaped her fate? If police hadn't uncovered Nunez's lies, would he have gotten away with it? Would Maria's death have been ruled an accident, a tragic overdose with no one to blame? Would he have walked away a free man, still practicing medicine, still pretending to be the devoted friend and doctor everyone believed him to be? And what was his real motive? Was it love, a desperate, unhinged kind of love that made him believe Maria belonged to him? Was it obsession, the kind that spirals out of control, where the thought of losing someone becomes unbearable? Or was it something even darker, a calculated crime committed by a man who had manipulated, lied, and deceived so many times before that he believed he could outsmart everyone once again? This wasn't just about a toxic relationship. It was about power, control, possession. Maria was not allowed to leave on her own terms. And in the end, Nunez made sure of that. One thing is undeniable: Maria Cruz should still be alive today. She had a future, she had dreams, she had people who loved her. And none of them got to say goodbye, because Gilberto Nunez made sure that Maria never got the chance to walk away. But here's the question that lingers. Did he really pay for what he did? He was convicted, yes. He went to prison, but not for murder. Despite all the evidence, the sedative, the fake messages, the forged letters, the calculated deception, he was only convicted of manslaughter. Many believe he got off too easy, that he should have been locked away for life. Because if what he did wasn't murder, then what is? A man like Nunez, a manipulator, a liar, a predator, had spent years controlling Maria's life. And even after taking it, he still insisted he was innocent. Even after all the lies were exposed, he never admitted what he did. So now we ask you, do you think justice was served? Or did a man who plotted, deceived, and killed walk away with a sentence far lighter than he deserved? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you want more chilling true crime cases, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell, because the truth isn't just stranger than fiction. It's darker. And sometimes it's more terrifying than we can imagine. Stay safe, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next one.